The new emperor cast me aside to marry his first love, the one who had always held his heart. And so, my entire family decided to give up. When the border was threatened, my father said, "My old war wounds are acting up. Can't get out of bed." When the capital's public security went downhill, my brother said, "I'm taking my accumulated leave. Do not disturb." When the Ministry of Revenue ran out of funds, my mother said, "I'm broke. Can't lend any." The new emperor flew into a rage. "What do you think you are? I have plenty of people." Excellent, we continued to slack off. Later, the first brother of the emperor's first love was sent by him to face the enemy and almost got himself killed. The second brother of the first love was dragged out by the emperor to solve a case and was scared witless in 3 days. The first love's mother, in a bid to bolster her daughter's standing, even pawned her coffin fund. Whoopi slacking off is a constant joy. The day before Qin ascended the throne, his first love, Chuing, returned. The very next day, without a word to anyone, he named her empress right in front of all the civil and military officials, grinding Aryan family's face into the dirt. "Mother, are we still going to the palace?" I asked, stifling a yawn. She had roused me before dawn, dressed me up, and had us sitting in the main hall early, saying we couldn't afford to lose face. Who knew we'd be waiting all morning only to receive this news? Go? Ha! He dares to try and burn the bridge after crossing it? If I don't skin them alive, my name isn't Luo Yunjin. Mother's eyes were blazing with rage. "Madam, Empress Dowager Qin is here. She's waiting at the gate. Should I show her in?" The steward stood in the hall and asked cautiously. The Empress Dowager's full name was Qin. She was my mother's childhood friend, and my engagement to Qin had been their idea in the first place. She's the Empress Dowager, and I'm just a general's wife. I wouldn't dare to bar her way, would I? Come, let us go and welcome her properly. Mother sneered, rising from her seat. Before she could take 2 steps, the Empress Dowager entered with a train of eunuchs and palace maids. "Sister, your words are too harsh. We've grown up together, our bond is closer than most." The Empress Dowager smiled warmly and took my mother's hand. "I dare not presume upon your grace, Empress Dowager. Please, take the seat of honor." Mother withdrew her hand and performed a curtsy, bowing her head. I followed suit. Seeing this, the Empress Dowager sighed helplessly and took the main seat. Buyer was truly in the wrong here. He should have informed the Yun family before naming his empress. I've already reprimanded him for his rashness. Please, sister, and Chinger, do not be angry. The Empress Dowager settled herself and began to soothe us. With one sentence, she blocked the question my mother was about to ask. Since things have come to this, what solution does your highness propose? Mother looked at her. Naming an empress is no trivial matter. The proclamation has already been made to the world. It cannot be undone. The only option is for Chinger to accept the rank of noble consort. The Empress Dowager shook her head with a sigh, her eyes full of apology. So you're saying this is a fait accompli, and you're forcing us to accept it? Mother's voice grew cold and heavy. Sister, don't put it so harshly. Buyer's heart was set on someone else. His actions were impulsive, I didn't foresee this either. Since it's already a fact, please be understanding. Can we not just be one harmonious family? Ha! A harmonious family? What is the Chu family anyway? You want my daughter to be humiliated just so everyone else can be happy? Absolutely not. My mother's temper finally broke, and she shouted angrily. Luo Yunjin. Don't think that just because I call you sister, you can forget your place. The realm belongs to my son now. The fact that I came here today is already a great show of respect. Her authority challenged, the Empress Dowager's face darkened. I advise you to accept the noble consort position quietly. Yun Qing has been betrothed to Buyer for years. If she is jilted now, I dare say no man in the realm would dare to marry her. The Empress Dowager threatened. You needn't worry about that, Empress Dowager. I, Luo Yenjin, may not have many talents, but I know how to make money. Even if Qinger never marries, I can support her for life. My mother was unyielding. Fine. A fine woman, you are, Luo Yenjin. Yes, your family contributed greatly to Buyer's ascension, but don't think we can't do without you. You chose this path yourself. When you come crawling back in regret, don't expect me to receive you. The Empress Dowager's voice trembled with fury as she swept out of the hall in a flourish of her sleeves. Noble consort, indeed. A high-sounding title for a concubine. He dares to dream of my daughter playing second fiddle? He's lost his mind. After the Empress Dowager left, Mother sent me off to rest. By the time I had slept my fill, the sky was almost dark. I went to the main hall for dinner and was surprised to find both my father and my eldest brother there. Father, aren't you heading back to the border tomorrow? Weren't you supposed to be meeting your old friends tonight? What are you doing home? Brother, isn't the Dali Temple, the Supreme Court, swamped with cases lately? Haven't you been living there for half a month? Why are you back too? I asked, puzzled. My old wound is acting up. I'm not going back to the border. I'll stay home and keep Qinger company for a while, all right? Father smiled at me kindly. Naturally, I was overjoyed and nodded enthusiastically. I've been in the Dali Temple for 5 years and haven't taken a single day off. I'm tired now. I want to rest at home for a couple of days. My brother said, his expression serious. He had become increasingly taciturn since he started solving cases, rarely showing any joy at home. I wondered if he'd ever be able to find a wife with that personality. Enough talk. It's rare that we're all together for a meal. Sit, everyone, sit. Mother gave the order, and we quickly took our places. Within moments, my bowl was piled high with food. This fish is delicious, have some, and this, and this. My father hadn't touched his own food, just kept adding my favorites to my bowl. Even my elder brother, whose emotions were becoming harder and harder to read, put a piece of my most detested celery into my bowl. This. Looking at the hidden worry behind my mother's calm eyes, how could I not understand their feelings? I was betrothed to Qin Bai when I was 8, and it had been 7 years now. Every Lantern Festival, Dragon Boat Festival, Mid-Autumn Festival. Any festive day, we would spend it together. I had watched him grow from a handsome youth into a young emperor. It would be a lie to say I felt nothing for him. After all, I had been surrounded by people my whole life telling me he was my future husband, the man I would spend my life with. Yet this man had betrayed me without a single word of warning. Father, mother, and my elder brother didn't mention it, and I didn't want to bring up Qin Bai and ruin the mood. We happily finished our reunion dinner together. But the very next day, a eunuch from the palace arrived with an imperial decree. Qin Bai wished to see me. At the imperial study. Your subject, Yan Qing, pays her respects to your majesty. May you live for 10,000. Qinger, rise. There's no need for such formality. Before my knees even touched the ground, Qin Bai hurried from his dragon throne to help me up. Once standing, I subtly withdrew my arm and stepped back 2 paces. Qinger, are you angry with me? Qin Bai asked softly. How dare I, your majesty? You are the son of heaven, the one above all others. Naturally, you may wed whomever you wish. I dare not question it. I kept my eyes lowered as I replied. Bai let out a helpless sigh. Just as he was about to speak again, a eunuch entered to announce that Chewing had arrived. What is she doing here? Bai asked hurriedly. And then he was rushing toward the door, his pace quickening until he was almost running. You have a weak constitution. If you wanted to see me, you should have sent a servant. I would have come to you. Why did you make the trip yourself? Bai's voice, full of undisguised concern, drifted back to me. I turned to see Chewing, clad in a red embroidered phoenix robe, leaning weakly against him. Your Majesty has a myriad of state affairs to attend to. How could Ying dare to trouble you? You ate so hastily this morning, and you were exhausted last night. Ying was worried about your health, so I went to the small kitchen to make some pastries myself. Chu Ying's voice was soft and sweet, her tone intimate. I, a woman myself, couldn't help but feel a stir of pity. The two of them stood at the door, exchanging pleasantries for quite some time before they finally noticed me again. Oh my, isn't this Sister Yun? When did you arrive? Your Majesty, why didn't you tell me? Chewing playfully thumped Bai's chest. Bai laughed, taking her hand in his, and walked her over to where I stood. Qinger, this is Ying. She is the daughter of the Minister of Rights. She is now my Empress. I said nothing, just gave Bai a flat, unimpressed look. His expression flickered with embarrassment. Is His Majesty saying that I should curtsy to the Empress? I asked, my tone flat. No. He couldn't meet my eyes as he replied. I glanced at Chewing beside him. The smile on her lips froze. His Majesty is right. Sister Yun's status is so much higher than mine. How could she possibly bow to me? In an instant, Chu Ying's face was wreathed in a new smile as she looked at me. We met a few times in our youth. Does Sister remember Ying? Qinger, you know Ying? Bai looked at me with mild surprise. Your Highness is of noble status. I dare not claim such a connection. I replied with cool distance. My father was the Grand General of the first rank, personally appointed by the late Emperor. Her father was nothing more than a fifth-rank clerk, only recently promoted to the third rank of minister after his daughter became Empress. Given the difference in our family backgrounds, we should never have crossed paths. But her mother and mine both ran businesses in the capital. Her mother, being a native of the capital with several generations of accumulated wealth, was a formidable rival. My mother, though a force to be reckoned with, found it hard to uproot such a long-established family. They were constantly at odds over competing businesses. I'd met Chewing a few times as a child, always during the moments when my mother and hers were at each other's throats. She had never been kind to me, and I had never bothered with her. I never expected to receive such a friendly welcome from her in the palace all these years later. Sister, what are you saying? Chewing, pretending not to notice my coldness, stepped closer and took my arm. I disliked being touched and tried to pull away. But Chu Ying's body suddenly tilted, and she fell to the ground. I know your mother and mine don't get along, and you don't like me, sister. But I am the Empress now, no longer that fifth-rank official's daughter you used to bully. How dare you still push me? Had she lost her mind with age? When did I ever push her? Even if I stole your position as Empress and wronged you, it was by His Majesty's decree. Are you questioning His Majesty's decision? Chu Ying clutched her chest, putting on a pitiful act of accusation. Bai, his face full of concern, knelt beside her, letting her lean against him. He glared at me, furious. Yun Qing, I must have been blind. Mother returned to the palace yesterday and suggested breaking the engagement. I refused, remembering the affection we once had. I thought you were gentle and reasonable. I was even considering following the example of an ancient emperor, establishing 2 empresses, one in the east and one in the west, so you would be equal in status and wouldn't have to bow to Ying or be beneath her. I never expected you to be such a venomous woman. Bai pointed a finger at me, his voice shaking with rage. Looking at his finger aimed at my nose, I barely held back a curse. His first statement was the truest thing he'd said all day. How had I never realized how blind he was? He couldn't see such an obvious fake fall right in front of his eyes. Could he even hold on to his throne? And East and West Empresses? What a grand, all-encompassing conceit. I did not push her. If your Majesty doesn't believe me, then dissolve the engagement. I will not confess to a crime I didn't commit, even if it means death. My voice was cold and detached. Bai stared at me, his chest heaving. He was about to speak when a eunuch rushed in hurriedly and whispered something in his ear. After a long moment, he looked back at me and pointed at the door. Get out! Get the hell out of here! I left without looking back. At the palace gate, I was surprised to see my parents and my elder brother all waiting beside the carriage. On the way home, Mother hesitated, as if wanting to speak. I patted her hand. Mother, it's fine. Anything that can be stolen away is just garbage. After I said that, Mother let out a long sigh of relief, the tension finally leaving her shoulders. The day after I returned from the palace, Bai issued a decree dissolving our engagement, slandering me with accusations of jealousy and unvirtuous conduct, stopping just short of calling me a shrew. After that, invitations from various noble daughters began pouring into our house, inviting me to their banquets. I knew how gossip-hungry those bored noble ladies were. Even if I felt nothing, I didn't want to go and be their entertainment. Mother declined them all on my behalf. It happened to be my grandmother's 80th birthday soon. So, I shut myself in for half a month, embroidering a 100-character longevity tapestry for her. I thought the matter would fade with time. Instead, it only grew worse. I was the victim of a broken engagement, yet in the common gossip, Bai and Chewing became the tragic, star-crossed lovers who were kept apart for years, and I was cast as the third party who used her powerful father to force the marriage. What a complete inversion of truth. Madam, the Empress has sent an invitation. She requests your presence and the young ladies at the palace's 100 Flowers banquet tomorrow. The steward came in with a troubled look during lunch. For an ordinary invitation, Mother could decline using father's rank as an excuse. But a summons from the palace was much harder to avoid. I could probably guess why Chewing was suddenly hosting this banquet. My father had claimed illness and stayed home. 3 days later, Chu Ying's eldest brother, Chu Feng, was appointed Grand General of the Cavalry, replacing my father at the front lines. Chu Ying's second brother, Chu Jia, had also been appointed Deputy Minister of the Dali Temple a few days prior, taking my brother's place. She loved creating trouble when there was none, and now that she had such a perfect chance to gloat, how could she possibly pass it up? Mother, how about I pretend to be sick? Father had been busy these days, making all sorts of delicious food for me. And my brother kept sending me interesting trinkets through his contacts. I was perfectly happy at home. It was Mother who had to go out every day to manage her businesses. I didn't care about going to the palace, but I didn't want Mother to suffer any more indignities on my account. The thought of her having to bow to Bai Shinro, Chu Ying's mother, at the palace made my blood boil. Pretend to be sick? No. I've been looking for a chance to get back at them for what you went through. I didn't expect her to come knocking on my door herself. Your maternal grandfather was the teacher of almost all third-rank and above civil officials in the court. Your maternal grandmother is the daughter of the richest man in Jiangnan. Your father holds command of 800,000 troops. My shops are spread across the realm. Except for being a little outmatched by Shinro in the capital, we've crushed them everywhere else. Qinxian and Qin Bai, if they let that Chu girl bully you, they'll have me to answer to. Mother slammed the table as she stood up, looking as if she'd been holding in her anger for a long time. Calm down, my dear, calm down. Father quickly rose and patted her on the back. Mother, you don't need to be so angry. The Chu family's fall from grace is coming soon. Sister, you must not feign illness tomorrow. You have to attend this 100 Flowers banquet. If you don't, you'll miss out on a wonderful show. My brother sat there, speaking with inscrutable confidence. His normally expressionless face held a faint, barely perceptible smile of satisfaction that sent a chill down my spine. My brother's predictions were always accurate. So the next day, my mother and I went to the palace. At the 100 Flowers banquet. My mother and I arrived late. Most of the families of officials above the third rank who were in the capital were already there. As we entered, we were met with pitying or scornful glances. But as we drew closer and they saw our attire and jewelry, their expressions turned to envy and greed. This eunuch has worked hard, a reward for you. Mother casually tossed a South Sea pearl to the leading eunuch. He caught it deftly and knelt in thanks. After paying his respects, he didn't leave but stayed close to us, seemingly hoping to serve us for the rest of the event. Many other eunuchs and maids in the garden also had envy sparkling in their eyes. This infuriated quite a few of the onlookers. Just some money, nothing but cheap ostentation. I glanced at the speaker, the wife of the Minister of Revenue, a known associate of Shinro. If you're so capable, why don't you give a reward yourself? You're so miserly you can't even part with a gold nugget, yet you dare to speak ill of me? Mother shot her a disdainful look. You. What about me? You're nothing but a third-rank official's wife. Who do you think you are to show off in front of me? Not even greeting me with proper respect, no sense of rank or order. Are you trying to defy the law? The minister's wife was so angry her mouth twisted, but the word stuck in her throat. Enough, enough. On such a fine day, it's not worth getting upset over such trifles. A voice as gentle as the wind came from behind. Without looking, I knew it was Shinro. If she wanted to play peacemaker, she had to see if my mother was willing. Quite right. Birds of a feather flock together. I shouldn't be angry at mere beasts. What did you say? Shinro's expression changed instantly. Nothing really. I just enjoy seeing people who can't stand me but can't do a thing about it. Mother straightened her ruby hairpin and led me towards the banquet, not sparing them a glance. Pfft. A family of useless slackers with only honorary titles to their names. Let's see how long they can keep up their arrogance. Before the banquet began, the Minister of Revenue's wife, who was seated a few places behind my mother, spat out. She normally wouldn't have been seated so close, but Chewing had used her influence to adjust the seating for Shinro's sake. What's that mangy dog barking about? Mother said casually, without turning around. The Minister of Revenue's wife, however, looked like she was about to flip the table in rage. At this, I finally relaxed, sitting beside Mother and watching the dishes being served, giving her a discreet thumbs up. I had clearly underestimated my mother's combat skills. Soon, the music began, and the banquet commenced. Everyone around was flattering Chewing and her mother, praising her two brothers. The compliments were often veiled digs at our family, elevating the Chus at our expense. Chewing and her mother were soaking up the praise, practically beaming with delight. My mother and I just ignored them, focusing on the food in front of us. Mother, the shrimp here isn't as good as father's. I agree. Mother nodded. Just as we were having a great time discussing the food, our conversation was interrupted. Yunqing, your father and brother haven't left the house for over 10 days now. They're not doing well, are they? Mind your own tongue. I turned to see Bai Rong, Chu Ying's close friend, who had spoken. What's the matter? Can't I speak my mind? All your mother can do is run her mouth anyway. The whole capital knows your father's war wound has flared up, causing a relapse. They say he doesn't have long to live. And as for your brother, just days after the evil spirit murder case started in the capital, he shut himself up at home. A few people from the Dali temple have let it slip that he was scared out of his wits by the ghost, which is why he made up an excuse to go home. Who knows where his soul is now? Bai Rong grew louder and louder, laughing heartily at the end. Her words attracted the attention of many around them. Several who bore our family ill will chimed in with mocking remarks, the Minister of Revenue's wife laughing the loudest. Bai Rong then walked over to Chu Ying and poured her a cup of wine. Your Highness's eldest brother is the Grand General of the Cavalry, defending our borders and protecting our people. He is a true hero. Your second brother, after taking over the Dali Temple, bravely shouldered the responsibility to solve the evil spirit case for the people. He is truly admirable. They are far superior to that family of frail, foolish, and senile layabouts. Ronger, that's too harsh. Chu Ying scolded Bai Rong. But her expression and the way she accepted the wine said otherwise. Those who understood the implication began to heap scorn on my family. My mother listened silently, making a mental note of everyone who had insulted my father and brother. All right, everyone, back to your seats. Bai Shinro chose that moment to step forward and approach my mother. She always played the good person in public, and here was her opportunity. Sister Luo, we've been rivals for so many years. I've always wanted to win, but I never imagined your family would fall so low. It's truly a pity. I've always had a kindred feeling for you. I wish I could take your place in suffering. Bai Shinro dabbed at her non-existent tears with a handkerchief, offering her condolences. You'd really like to take my place? Mother asked, her tone meaningful. I would, but heaven wouldn't allow it. It sees all, it knows who is good and who is bad. The wicked will always be punished. A husband with little time left, a son gone mad. Isn't that karma, Sister Luo? Bai Shinro covered her uncontrollably twitching lips with her handkerchief. Mother smiled. I too believe heaven sees all. I'll be sure to give it an extra offering tonight. Bai Shinro's smile froze. She stared at my mother in disbelief. Have you gone mad? The question drew a crowd of curious officials' wives. No, you will be the one to lose your mind. Mother's lips curved slightly. As her words faded, a eunuch came rushing in, panting heavily. Your Highness! Quickly, send for the imperial physicians. General Chu Feng is lying unconscious at the city gates. He was just carried in by the guards. Before he even finished, a servant boy ran in behind him. Madam! Please return home quickly. Young Master Chu Jia collapsed while investigating a case. When he woke up, he started calling everyone father. The master is furious. What did you say? Bai Shinro stumbled towards them, her face a mask of disbelief. General Chu Feng is grievously wounded and has just been brought to the palace gate. He needs the imperial physicians immediately, or his life may be in danger. The eunuch took a moment to catch his breath, then spoke again, urgency sharp in his voice. Madam, it seems the second young master has been scared witless, Silence! Bai Shinro slapped the servant before he could finish. The force of it sent him staggering, his cheek instantly red and swollen. spreading such vile rumors? Where is your Chu family upbringing? Bai Shinro screamed at the servant, pointing her finger. The boy dropped to his knees, crying out for forgiveness. Forgive me, I misspoke. Please, madam, come home quickly. The young master collapsed, and the master is terrified. Bai Shinro's expression softened somewhat at this. She turned to Chu Ying, who was hurrying towards her. Inger. Mother, don't worry. I'll take care of eldest brother. He will be saved, or I'll make the entire Imperial Medical Institute pay for his life. Chu Ying took her mother's hands and said firmly. Reassured, Bai Shinro's eyes filled with tears. She patted her daughter's shoulder and turned to leave with the servant. But she stopped short at the sight of my mother and I, completely absorbed in our meal. Luo Yunjin. She gritted out. Who? Who's calling me? Mother looked around for a while, before her gaze finally landed on Bai Shinro. She looked surprised. Why are you still here? Didn't your son just collapse? Shouldn't you be rushing home? What do you want with me? You. Bai Shinro closed her eyes and took a deep breath before speaking again. My son collapsed on the battlefield, fighting for our nation. He's been brought back to the palace and may be dying, and you, a general's wife, a woman of your age, have not a shred of compassion. You have no concern for my son who is bleeding for his country, and you sit here, eating without a care in the world. Tears streamed down Bai Shinro's face. She looked on the verge of fainting. The Minister of Revenue's wife and some of Bai Shinro's other cronies seized the chance to badmouth my mother, fawning over Bai Shinro and trying to soothe her. Oh. Are you sure it's your son, Chu Feng, who collapsed and was brought to the city gates? Wasn't he sent to the border by His Majesty? Did I remember it wrong? Leaving his post without the Emperor's express command is desertion, a crime punishable by death. Mother stared at Bai Shinro, her tone casual but cutting deep. Bai Shinro's eyes widened in shock. She grabbed the messenger eunuch by his collar. Are you certain it is my son, Chu Feng, who was brought in? It cannot be mistaken, madam. The guard at the gate recognized him. He is General Chu Feng's childhood friend. Bai Shinro's body trembled violently. The next moment, she collapsed in a faint. Chu Ying rushed to her mother's side, calling for her attendants to fetch a physician. The banquet was thus cut short. As we left the imperial garden, I felt a piercing gaze on my back. Turning, I caught Chu Ying's venomous glare. When my mother and I arrived home, it was already past the hour of the goat, around 1 to 3 p.m. I had expected my father and brother to have already eaten and retired to their rooms for a midday nap. Instead, I found them sitting properly in the main hall. The table was laden with steaming hot dishes, clearly cooked by my father. I asked Imoer to guess when you'd be back. His estimation was spot on. I just finished cooking and setting the table when you walked in. Father smiled, rising to lead both mother and me to our seats. The food at those banquets is barely human fare, isn't it? Cold and hard. It can't compare to home-cooked food. You must be starving, right? Seeing the tenderness in my father's eyes, I patted my rather full stomach and silently took the chopsticks he offered me. Father, have you and brother been waiting for us to have lunch? I glanced at their empty bowls and chopsticks. Don't worry about us. Your brother is a grown man, he won't die from missing one meal. Father said casually. My brother shot him a look that I could have sworn was full of exasperation. But when his eyes met mine, he regained his usual serious composure and nodded, as if to confirm what father had said. I bent my head and began to eat. My brother was 8 years older than me. He had been my tutor when I was young, and he wasn't shy about rapping my knuckles with a ruler when I didn't pay attention. He was always so stern that I was a little afraid of him. Father doted on me. He wouldn't even let a hair on my head be harmed. Mother mostly just blustered. She didn't have the heart to actually hurt me either. But my brother, he really did hit. And it really hurt. No matter how delicious Father's cooking was, I could barely manage a dozen bites. Mother was in a similar state. She put down her chopsticks and looked at the remaining food with some regret. I shouldn't have eaten so much just to spite that by Shinro. This made Father laugh out loud. If you can't finish it, you can't finish it. Since my lady loves it so, from now on, I will prepare all 3 meals for you. Not just lunch. Mother blushed at his teasing. But her expression quickly turned serious as her eyes swept over me and my brother. She discreetly pinched Father, trying to change the subject and return to business. Amor, Chinger and I saw quite a spectacle at the banquet today. Those 2 Chu sons were a perfect mirror of your and your father's situation in the capital. Did you have anything to do with that? Mother stared at my brother intently. I, too, looked at him expectantly. Those 2 useless, flashy Chu brothers? They're not even worthy of my attention. My brother said casually, not even pausing in his eating. But faced with the intense curiosity from me and my mother, he sighed, set down his chopsticks, and continued. Chu Feng spent every night in the capital's brothels. The little martial skill he learned in his youth was long forgotten. How could he possibly have any real ability to fight on the battlefield? He took a single arrow to the shoulder and threw such a fit he had to return to the capital. A minor wound, and he dragged it out until it became serious. He should blame his family for spoiling him, cultivating such a frivolous character who wouldn't bat an eye at desertion. As for Chu Jia, he's a coward. He can't even stand the sight of a chicken being killed, yet he insisted on taking my position as deputy minister of the Dali Temple. He was so eager to make a name for himself and prove me wrong that he rushed headlong into the evil spirit case. I expected him to be frightened. I just didn't expect him to lose his mind. But that's just another spectacle for you, isn't it? As for the rumors circulating in the capital, I know nothing about them. Ask Father. My brother picked up his chopsticks again, eating slowly and methodically. Our attention turned to Father. He coughed lightly, covering his mouth. I just couldn't stand seeing Chinger suffer. At the same time, I received news from the border that Chu Feng, the coward, had fled back to the capital. So, I had people spread some false rumors. I wanted to let that Chu family have their moment of glory, so that when they fell, it would hit them all the harder. Father finished, looking somewhat vindicated, but Mother's chopsticks clattered onto the table in fury. Since Chu Feng has already fled back, we could have just waited and laughed at their misfortune. Why did you have to go and curse yourself and Amor? Do you enjoy me coming home every day, hearing how you're at death's door and Amor's lost his mind? It's infuriating. My dear, don't be angry. That wasn't my intention. I truly didn't think it through. Father immediately tried to apologize, reaching out to hug her, but she pushed him away. When he couldn't soothe her, he looked at me helplessly. Seeing his pitiful expression, I couldn't bear to ignore him. I coaxed Mother until she finally sat back down. Father quickly leaned in. My dear, let me explain. Besides humiliating the Chu family, I also wanted to distinguish friend from foe. With the rumors of our family's downfall spreading and the Chus rising high, those with opportunistic leanings would inevitably show their true colors. You went to the banquet today, my sharp-witted wife. You must have clearly seen all those who kicked us while we were down, right? Father coaxed her gently. Seeing her expression soften, he continued. It was all my fault. I didn't think about the consequences. If you're still angry, hit me. I won't make a sound. Mother didn't respond, head bowed, still seemingly angry. Father grabbed her hand and made to slap himself with it. Mother cried out and tried to pull her hand back, but she was too late. His face only received a light tap. What are you doing? The children are watching. Mother glared at him, annoyed. Please don't be angry, my dear. When we get to the bedroom, I am yours to do with as you please. Father said shamelessly, his hot gaze making even me blush. Shameless. Mother flushed, yanking her hand back and stamping on his foot. But her anger seemed to have dissipated, and her complexion improved. Just as Father was about to sit down beside her, she slapped the table with a sharp crack. I have something to ask him, Oer. Why are you getting in the way? Father meekly stepped to the side while Mother spoke to my brother. Emoer, you've always loved solving cases. The position of Deputy Minister of the Dali Temple was something you schemed for and desired. Now you've lost it. What are your plans now? Mother asked. Don't worry, Mother. I have my own path. My brother replied nonchalantly. Seeing his confidence, Mother didn't press further. He always had a plan. The three of us put together couldn't match his cunning. And you? You're really not going back to the border? Mother turned to Father. I'd love to have you home with us, but you protected those frontier people for over a decade. Every year when you come home, you still worry about them. And now that coward, Chu Feng, has actually fled back. The border must be in chaos. Aren't you worried? She let out a sigh, torn. Part of me wants you to take charge, part of me doesn't. The thought of you going to defend that brat Qin Bai's kingdom makes me furious. But if you don't go, and something happens, I'm afraid you'll be racked with guilt and regret. Mother's voice was heavy with conflicting emotions. Wife, you worry too much. Father smiled, taking her hand. He glanced back at me, my brows furrowed with concern, and ruffled my hair. Chinger, don't worry about your father either. I already have someone guarding the border for me. Father withdrew his hand and stroked his beard, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes deepening with satisfaction. He seemed very pleased with this person. Who? Mother asked, curious. Prince Jinbei's heir, Qin Yi. Father replied. Ah, him? Mother was a little surprised, but then she breathed a sigh of relief. If he's there, you don't need to go back. That's good, that's very good. Qin Yi? The name sounded familiar, but no matter how hard I racked my brain, I couldn't place it. Eventually, I gave up. Mother, if you didn't know that Chu Feng had been injured and returned to the capital without permission, how were you so certain when you confronted by Shinro at the banquet? I was still a little confused. I had thought Mother had gotten the news from Father last night. But it turned out she didn't know either. Well, for one thing, your brother never speaks without certainty. And more importantly, even if I had my doubts, I would never let Bai Shinro see them. She will never, ever have the upper hand over me. Mother's eyes gleamed with cold fire. Suddenly, she had another thought and jumped to her feet. Exactly. Heaven really does see everything. I need to go out and buy some offerings. I'm going to give it a proper worship tonight. And with that, she swept out the door. Father followed, but was quickly sent back. Aren't you supposed to be in pain from your old wounds? If you go out now, aren't you afraid of being charged with deceiving the emperor? I can disguise myself. Silence. I'll count to 3. If I see your face again, you're not setting foot in my room for the rest of the month. Before Mother even finished, Father had vanished. After Mother left, the courtyard fell silent. I felt a scrutinizing gaze on the back of my head and turned around. Brother? My brother stared at me and then said, Prince Jinbei's heir. I stared back at him, confused. Seeing my expression, a flicker of something passed through his eyes. Never mind. Go play in your room. I wanted to scream in his ear that I had already come of age. The news that Chu Feng had deserted his post and fled back to the capital, disregarding the safety of the border and the morale of the troops, caused an uproar. Almost all the military officials in the court signed a joint memorial condemning him and demanding that Qin punish him severely. But somehow, through Chu Ying's influence, Qin let it slide. Chu Feng was merely ordered to remain confined to his house for 3 months. This enraged the military officials. They called him incompetent and even branded Chu Ying a harbinger of disaster. But these were all whispered complaints. And the fact that they had to whisper only made things worse. The military officials didn't mince words, and their curses were scathing. And the civil officials, each with tongues as sharp as a well-aimed arrow, sent memorials flying into the palace like snowflakes. Not a single word of theirs directly cursed Qin or Chu Ying, but the underlying sarcasm and biting criticism left them utterly humiliated. Chu Ying was so ashamed she wouldn't even leave the palace gates. As the emperor, Qin couldn't hide. He had to grit his teeth and face the storm, his face dark as thunder. I heard that the tea set in the imperial study was replaced several times a day, as he kept smashing it in a rage. As for Chu Jia, it seemed he truly had been scared witless. According to rumors from the Chu household, he was grabbing anyone in sight, servants, maids, whoever, and calling them father, except his own father. The Minister of Rights nearly coughed up blood in anger. He ordered Chu Jia tied up. The Imperial Medical Institute could only say he needed slow, gradual treatment. Perhaps, one day, he would snap out of it on his own. The whole capital was buzzing with gossip about the Chu family. Bai Xinro tried to show her face at her shops for a while, but eventually stopped going out altogether. This went on for almost a month. However, it was a boon for my mother. Without her old rival, her shops made a lot of money, and she was in a fantastic mood every day. Madam, the wife of the Minister of Revenue is here. She's asking to see you. Father and I were practicing boxing in the yard in the afternoon when the steward came to report. Mother, who was sitting at the stone table under a tree sipping tea, frowned. What does she want? She says she's here to apologize to you, madam. Apologize? Mother snorted. That's a first. Now that Bai Xinro has stopped causing trouble, I've been getting bored. Let her in. I want to see what she's up to. The steward left, and soon the Minister of Revenue's wife followed him in. Father had gone inside as soon as the steward arrived, leaving me with Mother. The moment she saw Mother, the minister's wife smiled so wide her eyes disappeared. Madam, it's only been a little over a month, but your complexion is looking better and better. And your daughter. Oh, my, what a beautiful young lady. Just looking at her brings me joy. Not only did she praise Mother, but she grabbed my hand and complimented me as well. Get to the point. Mother pulled her hand away from mine, her tone cold. The minister's wife's face flushed with embarrassment. She held back her irritation and quickly pasted the smile back on. I've wronged you in the past, madam. Please forgive me. I'm here today on my husband's orders. The Ministry of Revenue would like to borrow some money from you. Don't worry, the loan will be paid back with interest after next year's taxes are collected. It's not a gift. The minister's wife smiled, her attitude as submissive as she could make it. Since she was being so obsequious, Mother's initial harshness softened a little. Alone? What for? I know the national treasury isn't exactly overflowing with the constant skirmishes at the border, but surely it's not so dire that you need to borrow from a merchant like me? Mother asked, puzzled. Actually, you're right. The minister's wife glanced around, making sure there were no outsiders, before leaning in and whispering. His Majesty wants to expand and renovate the southern palace, so he can stay there during his inspection tour next spring. Mother's brow furrowed. No money. I'm not lending any. How can you not have money? Even apart from your mother's side, your own shops in the capital must be making a fortune. The minister's wife's tone grew sharp, a hint of anger flashing in her eyes. Mother smiled at her. All my money goes to clothes and jewelry. You saw how I throw money around at the palace last time. I don't really save money. Mother lied without batting an eye. Besides, why come to me for money? Why not go to buy Shinro? I suddenly remembered something Mother didn't know yet. She had been at our suburban estate recently. While she was away, Bai Shinro and the Minister of Revenue's wife had fallen out. It seemed the minister's wife had been gossiping about Bai Shinro to try and fit into a different social circle, and Bai Shinro had overheard. Bai Shinro had stopped leaving her house after that. Seeing the minister's wife's increasingly grim expression, I leaned over and quickly whispered the story in Mother's ear. Mother raised an eyebrow, and when she looked back at the minister's wife, there was a distinct note of disdain in her eyes. The minister's wife's forced smile vanished completely. Luo Yenjin, what's that look supposed to mean? I am still the wife of a third-rank official. You have no right to look down on me. She snarled. Look down on you? I wouldn't even be scolding you if I thought you were worth it. I despise two-faced people more than anything. If you hadn't stabbed Bai Shinro in the back, I might even have some respect for you. But now? Not so much. Close the gate. Show her out. I have no money to lend. Go find someone else. If you don't believe me, ask your husband to report this to His Majesty and have him come and ask me himself. With that, Mother took my hand and led me inside. The minister's wife tried to follow, but the steward had her restrained and escorted out. Fresh on the throne, and he's already thinking about pleasure and luxury. I never realized he was such a person. If it wasn't for the fact that only one of the late emperor's 6 sons was even half decent, and he was already betrothed to you, your father would never have pushed him onto the throne. Mother fumed as soon as we were inside. I couldn't help but think back to the time before the late emperor's death. With father's and my maternal grandfather's backing, Qin Bai's ascent had been remarkably smooth. The other 5 princes had essentially given up without a fight, realizing they had no chance. Qin Bai became emperor almost without a drop of blood being spilled. They each received their own fiefdoms and titles. It was, by all accounts, the most peaceful succession in recent dynasties. 3 days later. It was almost time for lunch, but my brother still hadn't returned. Father sent a servant to the tea house my brother frequented, but he wasn't there. It was well after we had finished our lunch that my brother finally returned, his expression troubled. He dismissed the servants, closed the door, and looked at father, his face grim. Prince Gong, Prince Ren, Prince Zhuang, Prince Rui, Prince Yen. All died suddenly. What? Father exclaimed in shock. The news shook me as well. These 5 princes were Qin Bai's 5 paternal half-brothers. Just yesterday, I was thinking how lucky they were, royal princes who rarely died of natural causes. How could they all die so suddenly today? It was impossible not to suspect foul play. Additionally, Prince Jinbei, Prince Pingnan, all the late emperor's brothers, also passed away. Their children and families didn't survive either. My brother's voice was laced with a note of grim disbelief. He looked at father. A friend informed me that they had all been taking longevity pills for the past month. These pills were commissioned by the late emperor, said to prolong life. He lived over a decade longer than the emperors before him. Someone leaked word that the longer you take them, the longer you live. They started taking the pills themselves and made their children take them too. Now, after only a month, they're all gone. When the late emperor passed, the box on his nightstand contained those longevity pills and the formula. He passed it all down to ChineSDrama. As my brother finished, my father's expression grew increasingly grim. Father, ChineSDrama is definitely connected to this. If he's truly this ruthless, we need to prepare. Your troops are at the border. They can't help us in a crisis here. You have the Tiger Tally, the military command token, and years of military prestige, plus grandfather's influence. ChineSDrama wouldn't dare make a rash move against us openly, but we have to be wary of hidden dangers. Father nodded. Clenching his fists, he was about to head to his study, but then he stopped and looked at my brother. What about Yi? He's safe for now. He got the news at the border and went home to pay his respects to his father. I've sent a message to him. We'll know more when we get his reply. Father let out a slight breath of relief and left. My brother was about to follow, but he stopped and looked at me. Are you scared? I shook my head. Truly, my sister. The words sounded so much like father. A moment, I have a task for you. Go to mother's shop and tell her what happened. Tell her to be cautious, but not to be unduly alarmed. These princes have just died. If ChineSDrama doesn't want to be overthrown immediately, he won't move against us for a while. He wouldn't be able to handle the consequences. Here in the capital, just act as you normally would. If someone annoys you, hit them. If something happens that you can't handle, come to me. I nodded. Seeing me like this, my brother actually smiled faintly and reached out to ruffle my hair. The moment his large hand landed on my head, it was as if I was frozen in place. I didn't dare move. But it was only for a moment. He withdrew his hand and left. I put a hand over my racing heart. It was beating fast, but it also felt warm. Following my brother's instructions, I immediately went to my mother's shop to relay the news. But I was surprised to find Bai Xinro there too. And beside her was the Minister of Revenue's wife. They were practically stuck together like glue, looking as if they had made up. Sister Bai is truly a paragon of selfless virtue, putting the nation before her own family. She is a woman of great righteousness, unlike some people. They're nothing but nouveau riche merchants, stinking of money. The minister's wife cozied up to Bai Xinro, casting a disdainful look at my mother. Bai Xinro was smiling, apparently very pleased with the flattery. But her arm had drifted away from the minister's wife's, a subtle distance between them. It seemed she still harbored some resentment. I had heard that Bai Xinro had donated half her fortune to the Ministry of Revenue. I didn't believe it at first, but it seemed to be true. I wondered what she was playing at. Oh, please, don't make me laugh. Great righteousness? The commandant's wife, standing beside mother, scoffed. She's just doing it to shore up her daughter's position as empress. Why else would she donate to the Ministry of Revenue without expecting anything in return? Because of her, my daughter was barred from entering the palace for the imperial consort selection. You two have really played a clever game, haven't you? The commandant's wife sneered. Donate yourself if you can. I'm paving the way for my daughter, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's only one empress in the harem right now, my daughter. No concubines, no consorts. If you disrespect me again, I'll have my daughter ask His Majesty to send your husband to some godforsaken backwater post. By Shinro, perhaps worn down by a month of frustration, lost her composure and snapped back. Oh, look at you! Just a jumped-up fifth-rank official's family with no real standing, flaunting your money in front of me? Go on then. Ask your daughter to send my husband away. I dare you. Let's see what His Majesty does then. The commandant's wife was unfazed. Bai Shinro was so angry she lunged at the commandant's wife, trying to grab her hair. But the commandant's wife was taller and stronger. She easily wrestled Bai Shinro to the ground and started beating her. After a while, they were separated. Bai Shinro, clutching her face, pointed at the commandant's wife. Just you wait. After delivering her threat, she was helped out by the minister's wife. The commandant's wife stayed with my mother. I haven't had a good fight like that in a long time. Exhilarating. Oh, I almost forgot my real purpose. Madam Yun, let's see those new tiaras you just got in. She turned to Mother and asked. Mother had the shop attendants bring out the 3 most expensive and fashionable headpieces and simply gave them to the commandant's wife. Looks like you two really don't get along. The commandant's wife said, surprised. Anyone who makes her miserable makes me happy. Mother replied with a smile. The commandant's wife didn't hesitate and accepted the gifts. Before leaving, she repeatedly promised that she would beat Bai Shinro every time she saw her again. As she walked away, I looked at Mother's still smiling face and asked, how did Bai Shinro fall so low? Everyone's kicking her while she's down. Her husband's rank is still lower than the commandant's, but Chuing is still the empress. The commandant's rank isn't that high, but his family is one of the 5 great noble houses. They have deep roots. The main problem is Qin Bai's own short-sightedness. His mother, Qin Xian's, family were only 5th-rank officials. They had no influence to offer him. After he betrayed you, he lost your father and your grandfather's support. With no imperial consort selection this year, the daughters of the great families haven't entered the palace. No ministers are going to risk their necks for him. He has very few reliable people left. The commandant's wife would never dare to speak out against His Majesty himself. But she's more than capable of dealing with Bai Shinro. Given Qin Bai's current position, even if he wanted to, he couldn't afford to cross a powerful, entrenched noble family just to appease his empress. Mother analyzed for me. After she finished, I thought about it for a while. By the time I came back to my senses, Mother was already heading towards the carriage, ready to inspect her next shop. I suddenly remembered my brother's instructions and hurried after her. Inside the carriage, I told Mother quietly about the longevity pills. I expected her to be stunned, but she just got excited. Money! Let's make more money! Mother's eyes gleamed. Since Bai Shinro donated half her fortune to the Ministry of Revenue, she's definitely short on cash. I'll use this chance to cripple her businesses. Maybe I can buy them out cheap. Mother, did you hear what I just said? You're not mistaken about the danger? I looked at her in disbelief. Of course not. Silly girl, even if Qin Bai wanted to attack us, he'd have to do it in the shadows. As the saying goes, money makes the world go round. In a while, I'll have your brother hire a group of skilled martial artists from the Jianghu martial arts world for protection. And we should also find a poison master and a miracle healer. If Qin Bai makes a move, we'll show him who takes who down first. Mother slammed her thigh with a laugh. Truly the only woman who could keep my grand general father in line. Brave, to say the least. Suddenly, I thought my family's ranking by cunning needed to be revised. It used to be, eldest brother, father, mother, me. Now, I think mother and I could swap places. But hey, there's nothing wrong with making money. 2 more months passed. A major piece of gossip surfaced during this time. After Chu Feng had fled back to the capital injured, and my father claimed to be sick and stayed home, Qin Bai appointed another military official to the border. He didn't want to use the old guard, so he chose a young officer he had personally groomed. But this officer died almost as soon as he arrived. Word had it, he was young and brash, leading a small unit on a raid, but was led into a fog and had his head cut off right at the city gates. It was a devastating blow to our troops' morale. The border city was nearly overrun. Then Prince Jinbei's heir, Qin Yi, led his own raid. Using the same fog, he achieved victory with a smaller force, taking the enemy leader's head and restoring the army's morale. From that point on, Qin Yi's fame began to grow. His abilities were spoken of in mythical terms. They called him the war god. He became the object of adoration for everyone in the capital, from 5-year-old children to septuagenarians. Tea houses and taverns were filled with storytellers narrating his legendary exploits. Qin Bai had actually sent another court-appointed general to the border later. But he had no real impact. The border troops had already fully recognized Qin Yi as their commander. The frontier people were also deeply loyal to him. Now that the border was pacified, Qin Bai had, 10 days earlier, issued an edict summoning Qin Yi to the capital to receive his rewards. By my reckoning, he should arrive in the next few days. He was said to be a man of immense martial prowess and breathtaking handsomeness. Suddenly, the noble ladies of the capital were all abuzz, chattering about him. His fame was at its zenith. I couldn't even step out the door without hearing his name these days. It was practically ingrained in my ears. Chinger, is there anything you've been wanting lately? Your mother has more money than she knows what to do with. Mother took a satisfied sip of her tea and asked me. Nothing, Mother, nothing at all. I'm going out for a bit. I waved my hands in refusal and made a quick exit. How could I dare ask Mother to buy me anything else? Ever since she bought half of Bai Xinruo's shops, she'd been spending money like water. She kept sending new clothes, jewelry, and all sorts of trinkets to my room. I didn't have space for them anymore. We'd had to clear out 5 or 6 spare rooms just to hold it all. I probably wouldn't wear most of those clothes and accessories in a year. I couldn't let her keep buying. It was such a waste. A few days ago, I went to the bookshop to buy the latest installment of my favorite story. They had sold out, but the shopkeeper had said new stock was coming in today. That's why I was out. The days of eating, sleeping, and doing little else were getting a bit monotonous. Xiao Xiao, would you like a candied hawthorn stick? I asked the young girl beside me, pointing at the candy hawthorn vendor. Her name was Xiao Xiao, one of the many extraordinary individuals my brother had hired. She was around my age, a few months younger, a little shorter and slimmer. She looked like a 12 or 13-year-old child. But she was a master of both medicine and poison, and her reputation in the Jianghu for escaping danger was legendary. She had once escaped the pursuit of the #1 martial artist in the world. My brother placed her by my side, not for her fighting prowess, but so she could spirit me away to safety in times of danger. That was how he intended to protect me. Xiao Xiao shook her head. Looking at her round, baby face and her perpetually serious expression, I barely resisted the urge to pinch her cheeks. Sigh. I finally found a cute little sister younger than me, someone to satisfy my protective instincts, but she was even more mature than I was. Xiao Xiao and I continued walking. The streets of the capital seemed more crowded with out-of-towners than usual. They walked slowly, wearing sad, weary expressions. Before I could get a closer look, a long, horrifying cry of a horse, followed by screams, drew my attention. I looked over and saw that someone had cut a horse down in the middle of the street. In the center of the road, a man in black clothes knelt on one knee, shielding a terrified, crying child in his arms. "Are you tired of living? You dare to cut down our family's horse? Don't you know our young lady is the Empress's closest friend? You're lucky she wasn't in the carriage. If she had been, killing you 1,000 times over would be too light a punishment." A servant boy, who had crawled out from the front of the overturned carriage, shouted. I recognized the family crest on the carriage. It belonged to the Bai family, Byrone's family. The servant raised his whip to strike the man in black, but the man caught it. With barely a flick of his wrist, the servant went flying to the side, still holding the whip. The man in black didn't even look at him. He stood up and handed the child back to a frantic woman who had been waiting nearby. She took him, thanked him profusely, and left. The man in black turned to go as well, but the servant scrambled to his feet and blocked him again. Insolent cur! Do you know what standing the Bai family holds in the court? Rank and privilege be damned. Riding a horse at full gallop through a crowded street, almost killing someone, that is a crime, regardless of who you are. The man in black retorted, his voice cold and commanding. Though I hadn't yet seen his face, his voice alone sounded like that of a man of noble and upright character. Ha! From your accent, you must be a country bumpkin, aren't you? Who knows what backwater you crawled out of? Let me teach you a lesson about the law of the land. The servant took out a whistle and blew it sharply. Soon, a few burly men appeared and surrounded the man in black. The horse didn't even touch the child. But even if it had, you'd still be a nobody. No one would dare to hold me accountable. Today, I'll show you how high the sky truly is. The servant waved his hand, and the burly men drew their blades, attacking the man in black. The man in black seemed to be injured. Perhaps the act of killing the horse had aggravated his wounds. His movements were sluggish. I could tell he was quite skilled, but against so many opponents, and with his injuries, he was gradually losing ground. The servant sneered with satisfaction. Look around! See how many people are willing to help you? Not a single one. Why? Because they all know the Bai family's power. You ignorant fool, you know nothing at all. I couldn't stand his smug face any longer and walked over to them. Oh. Let's hear it, then. What exactly is this power of the Bai family? I folded my arms and leaned against the wrecked carriage, giving the servant a cold look. Xiao Xiao stood close, ready to protect me. Who do you think you? The servant started to swear, but when he saw my face, he immediately shut his mouth. A look of contempt crept into his eyes. Miss Yun, don't be a busybody. Your family has seen better days, and you're out of favor with His Majesty. We, the Bai family, are the rising stars. If you want a falling out, we'll both lose out. Hearing this servant's threats, I couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia. It seemed I had been out of the limelight for too long. They had all forgotten my childhood reputation as the little terror of the capital. After I was betrothed to the prince, to save face for the royal family in Qinbai, I had put away my wild ways and acted the part of a gentle, virtuous noble lady for a few years. It seems I had given them the wrong impression. Usually, my mother was always there to protect me, so I never had to lift a finger. But today, I'd start with the servant and remind them all of who I used to be. I've taken a fancy to him. Today, I'm taking him with me. I pointed at the man in black, who was still fighting the thugs. The man in black glanced at me amidst the chaos and faltered for a moment, almost getting struck by a blade. He barely managed to regain his focus and avoid injury. The servant opened his mouth to argue, but I was out of patience. I had already spent too much time on this. If I didn't get to the bookshop soon, I'd miss out on my story again. I picked up a fallen horsewhip from the ground and gave the servant 2 sharp lashes. The hatred in his eyes flared. He lunged at me, reaching out to grab me. "Think carefully before you touch me," I said calmly. "If even a hair on my head is harmed, your life won't be enough to pay for it. Need I remind you of who my father, my mother, my elder brother, my maternal grandfather and grandmother are? As the daughter of the Grand General, even if I beat you to death with this whip right here in the street, I guarantee no one would be willing to give you a proper burial." The servant stopped, his gaze locked on me. "Is there no law in this land?" "Law?" I laughed. "Didn't you just say it yourself? You know better than I do what passes for law in the capital." The servant fell silent. I raised the whip and struck him again. This time, the defiance in his eyes gave way to fear. He didn't dare play tough with me anymore. "It was my fault," he said, kneeling. "Please, stop. You can take him." He waved his hand, and the burly men retreated. Seeing that the man in black was free, I tossed the whip at the servant. "Get lost." He picked up the whip and scrambled away. The big men followed. As the crowd dispersed, I glanced at the man in black. He was still standing, so I ignored him, taking Xiao Xiao by the hand and hurrying towards the bookshop. But we hadn't gone 10 paces when a figure in black blocked our path. "No need to thank me." Without looking up, I waved my hand dismissively and tried to go around him. He blocked me again. "Didn't you just say I was yours? Take me with you." I was about to snap something back when I looked up and saw his face. I froze. This man looked even fiercer than my brother. He had the same sharp, chiseled features as my brother. His face had that high-boned, cold quality. But while my brother's coldness was one of aloof indifference, this man seemed to radiate an aura of pure bloodlust. Yet if you stripped away that cold exterior, his face was even more handsome than my brother's. If he had been born in the capital, my brother's title as the capital's most handsome cold man would surely be lost. He was staring at me intently. Remembering what he'd said, I was afraid he might have the wrong idea, that I expected him to repay me with his body, so I quickly clarified. "I was just doing a good deed. It was nothing. Don't worry about it. Go wherever you were going." He didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his robes and pulled out a small object, holding it out to me. I took a look and was stunned. That was my father's favorite jade pendant. He hadn't worn it in a long time. I thought he'd lost it. How did this man have it? "Who are you?" I looked at him. And when my eyes met those sharp, hawk-like phoenix eyes, I felt a jolt of familiarity. Why did those eyes seem so familiar? "You don't remember me?" He frowned. I searched my memory but couldn't place him. I shook my head. His expression tightened. The emotions that flickered across his face were unreadable. Suddenly, he doubled over in a coughing fit. The coughs grew harsher, each one more intense than the last, sounding like he was about to cough up his lungs. "Are you all right?" Since he had my father's personal item, he must be an acquaintance. I asked with some concern. "It's nothing," he said. "Please, I need to see your father." Thinking about my still unbought book, I looked at this man who looked like he was about to collapse at any moment, and decided to take him home first. On the way, he kept his head down, avoiding people, seeming anxious not to be seen. Because he was a stranger and I didn't know his intentions, I didn't take him straight to my father. I sent Xiao Xiao ahead with the pendant and waited with him in the main hall. Unexpectedly, my father arrived with incredible speed, almost as fast as when Mother was threatening to make him disappear. "Qin Yi! You made it!" Father leaped forward, standing before him. Then, seeing his face, he cried out in alarm. "You're wounded?" Qin Yi? This man was Qin Yi, Prince Jinbei's heir? As I stood frozen in shock, Father quickly arranged for him to be taken to a guest room. Xiao Xiao was called to tend to his injuries. "That man's got incredible willpower," Xiao Xiao remarked after examining him. "A wound that deep in his abdomen, and poison too. He managed to fight off those thugs for so long. Anyone else would have succumbed to the poison long ago, but he held on until now before collapsing. His mental fortitude is remarkable." I was curious and wanted to see just how bad his injuries were, leaning in for a look. But before I could even glimpse past the bed curtains, Father gave me a firm slap on the back of the head. "Men and women shouldn't be so familiar. How can a young lady like you look upon such things?" Father scolded me. "Xiao Xiao is younger than me. If she can see it, why can't I?" Stung by the sudden slap, I protested with some indignation. "I'm a girl. Xiao Xiao is a girl too." I went on. "You've dragged her here to tend to a man's wounds. What about her reputation?" Father had been about to scold me further, but after hearing my words, he looked a little embarrassed. "I had no choice. I can't trust the doctors outside. It's an emergency. We have to be flexible." "Don't worry, miss," Xiao Xiao said, turning to look at me. "I've been treating the injured since I was 5 years old. I've seen every kind of body. To me, they are just bundles of flesh. No difference between a man and a pig." Her eyes were even more deadpan than my brother's at his most stoic. It seemed nothing could rouse any emotion from her. I felt a little relieved. But a pig? Remembering the pink and white cuts of meat I'd seen hanging in the butcher shops, I suddenly lost all desire to take a look. "Let's not compare him to a pig, shall we?" My father, a little taken aback by Xiao Xiao's comparison, then asked, "Can you cure the poison?" Xiao Xiao nodded. The frown that had been etched on my father's brow finally eased. "Tell me what you need, and I'll get it." With that, he shooed me out of the room and closed the door. I stared at the closed door in front of me and took a deep breath. I knew my father was doing it for my own good, and that I had been a bit too forward. But he actually hit me. It was the first time he'd ever raised his hand to me, my whole life. It didn't hurt much, but my pride did. I decided then and there that I wasn't going to give him the belt I'd just finished making for him. I was still sulking at dinner. But when Father sat down and served me a table full of my favorite dishes, coaxing me in that gentle voice of his, I immediately gave in. "Qiner," Father asked in the middle of the meal, "have you ever saved Qin Yi before?" "No," I said, confused. "I only helped him today. Not before." I didn't understand why he was asking. I'd never even met him before. How could I have saved him? Maybe it was a long time ago, and you were too young to remember. Qin Yi told me his childhood savior was you. He recognized your face, but didn't know who you were. When you said you were my daughter today, and he saw your features, he finally confirmed it." I shook my head. I still had no memory of it. He said it happened at the border. I figured it must have been when you were 10 years old. That was the only time you've ever been to the border. I was badly wounded that year, almost died. Your mother brought you and your brother to the border. The situation was chaotic, no one could keep an eye on you. Did you go off by yourself somewhere and save someone? 10 years old? The border? I put down my chopsticks and thought about it. And then I remembered. The military doctors all said Father was going to die. I refused to believe it. I remembered reading in a book about a miraculous herb that could resurrect the dead and heal the dying. So I snuck off into the mountains to look for it. I didn't tell Mother because I knew she wouldn't let me go. By a tree, I found a man covered in blood. It was raining heavily. I was scared, but I thought about how it might earn some good karma for my father, so I dragged him into a cave. As I was about to leave, a group of masked men in black passed by outside, searching for someone. They looked dangerous. I covered the cave entrance with brush. They ended up searching outside all night, and I was trapped in the cave with that blood-soaked man. He spiked a high fever during the night, and I was terrified he would die right next to me. I watched over him, barely sleeping a wink. By dawn, he had regained consciousness. He asked my name. I was afraid he might be a bad person, so I made up a name. He gave me his name and said I could call on him for help if I ever needed it. Oh! That's why the name Chini was so familiar. It was the name he had told me back then. I just hadn't paid any attention to it. His face had been a bloody mess too. After I helped him use a signal to contact his men, I ran back to the camp. I was terrified for a long time afterward, feeling like I'd narrowly escaped death. I think there might be something like that, I said hesitantly, casting a nervous glance at my mother. She had spent all that time watching over my father in his tent. I was staying alone, she didn't know I'd been out all night. I hadn't dared tell her then. If she knew I'd put myself in that kind of danger, she'd have twisted my ear off. Seeing her expression darken, I threw myself into her arms. Mother, don't be angry. It was a long time ago. Nothing happened. After that, I was much more careful. I don't make those rash, stupid decisions anymore. I've learned from it, I've grown up. And now, I've got you all to protect me. Nothing like that will ever happen again. Mother looked down at me, her expression unreadable. She didn't lash out, but her eyes grew red. It was my fault, she said, her voice trembling. I brought you there and I didn't watch you properly. If anything had happened to you, I would never have. Her sudden tears frightened the three of us. Even when Father was at death's door, Mother had held herself together. She'd never cried in front of us. We all scrambled to comfort her. Even my brother, who was so rarely sentimental, said some things I'd never expected to hear from him to try and soothe her. It was a long time before she calmed down. But the moment she did, she grabbed my ear. She didn't twist hard, though. You've really learned your lesson? Really, I swear, I said, raising my hand. More real than gold. Even if you've learned a little martial arts, your flower fist and embroidered kick are nothing to a real master. If something happens, don't be a hero. Let your father and brother handle it. Understand? Yes, I understand. I promised, and she finally let go. Where's Qin Yi? I rubbed my stinging ear, looking for the culprit. I had saved his life twice, and this was how he repaid me. He's gone. Father sighed. Gone? But his injuries were so serious. I exclaimed in surprise. He said what he needed to say. He was afraid he'd bring trouble upon us. As soon as he woke up, he had his men take him away. Xiao Xiao already neutralized the poison. His abdominal wound is bandaged. He'll be fine as long as he gets some rest. Xiao Xiao treated his wounds and dressed them? My brother suddenly spoke up. Father nodded, not understanding why it mattered. My brother's expression darkened. Seeing his reaction, I thought back to what Xiao Xiao had said. She had come to protect me, to repay a debt of gratitude to my brother. I hadn't believed it at the time. My brother was too selfish to do a good deed for no reason. And he didn't seem to like women much. I couldn't imagine what kind of favor he could have possibly done for her. But seeing him now, I thought I was starting to get it. Looks like the iceberg had finally melted. I pictured Xiao Zhao's face, even more expressionless than my brother's. My brother's path to love was a long one. Seeing my brother ask a question and then say nothing more, father ignored him and changed the subject. Wife, if you have nothing else to do, stockpile some grain. As much as you can. Father said, his face full of worry. What's happened? Mother sat up straight. Chini gave me some news. On his way from the border, he saw many refugees. When he asked around, he learned that several areas had been hit by drought. The local officials kept it quiet. No one in the capital knows yet. He then turned to my brother. You know a lot of unusual people, don't you? Chini says there seems to be a plague in a small town in the south. The number of infections is still small, so he's not sure. Since you're stuck at home anyway, you should go and check it out. My brother thought for a moment, then said, I'll take Xiao Xiao with me. She's the descendant of Ghost Doctor. She's a master of both medicine and poison. You're taking her? Who's going to protect your sister? Didn't you give her to Chinger? Father didn't approve. Qin Yi was injured in an assassination attempt linked to Qin Bai. Given our family's ties with Qin Yi, things are only going to get more dangerous. Chinger was just going out for pleasure anyway. But with all this chaos from the drought and possible plague, it's safer for her to stay home. Thank you, brother. My dear, dear brother. With your new love, you've already forgotten your little sister. Father started to protest, but I quickly interjected. I don't mind staying home. I was only going out to buy books anyway. I can just send the servants. The plague is more important. If it's real, this is serious. I wasn't about to miss this chance. My brother was finally interested in someone. I wanted to see what it looked like when a man like him, cold, calculating, always in control, fell in love. Okay, maybe I just wanted to see him fail. A little. Father didn't press the matter. But I was even more confused than before. What was the relationship between Qin Yi and my family? Why did my father believe everything he said? Even my brother didn't question him. I asked. Qin Yi saved my life. Father said, each word clear. I was dumbfounded. How come I never knew about this? I said, looking at Mother and my brother, who showed no surprise. You all knew? You kept it from me. I felt like my heart was about to be shattered into pieces. You were too young then. And your nature was still wild. The late emperor strictly forbade military officials from having close ties with his brothers. We couldn't make a big deal of it. Only a few people knew. We were afraid you'd be a little loose-lipped, so we decided not to tell you. We never expected you to have to repay the debt for us anyway. A little loose-lipped? No one expected me to repay the debt. Listening to my father's description of my childhood self, I was certain of one thing: he was definitely my biological father. He seemed a little embarrassed after saying that. I didn't expect my debt of gratitude to be repaid by you, twice over. I underestimated you, daughter. Whether the plague was real or not, the drought was. My mother had just bought a large stockpile of grain. Within days, a huge wave of refugees flooded the capital. the news of the drought was officially out. In the afternoon, my mother was sitting in the yard, doing her accounts. I was helping her with some small tasks. The steward came in with a man I didn't recognize. "Shopkeeper Lu, what brings you here?" Mother looked up, greeting him like an old acquaintance. "Madam, Bai Shinro came to my pawnshop today. She wants to sell her shops. She said she wants to sell them all. She asked how soon it could be done. She needs cash urgently." "Oh." Mother thought for a moment, a knowing smile spreading across her face. "Her shops have been losing money because of me. Now, with the drought, she's probably trying to make a desperate gamble. She wants to convert them to cash to buy grain and try to recoup her losses. It was a lucky coincidence that I'd given you this shop to manage, and I don't go there often, so Bai Shinro doesn't know it's one of mine. That's how I got to hear this news." Mother put down her pen, looking quite pleased. "Madam, what should we do?" "Bai Shinro also specifically told me not to sell the shops to anyone else, that she would buy them back later," shopkeeper Lu said, looking troubled. "She says she'll buy them back, and we just have to listen? She's the one who needs money now. Tell her we can buy them all, but our cash is tight. We'll have to drive the price down as low as we can. As for not selling to anyone else, that's nonsense. If there's money to be made, we make it. The drought's already hit the capital. Anyone with spare cash is going to be hoarding grain. Not many other pawn shops will be able to come up with that kind of money all at once to buy all her shops. Even if they could, they'd probably rather use it to buy grain. Don't be afraid of her. The tougher you act, the better. She can sell or not, her choice. She can try someone else. But she'll be back." Mother analyzed slowly. The more shopkeeper Lu listened, the brighter his eyes became. With his instructions clear, he happily left. After he was gone, Mother called the steward in. "A few days ago, I bought grain from those merchants at a price that was too low. They must have lost money on it. Go and see them again. Tell them I'll now buy all their grain at triple the price. Ask them to reserve most of it for me. And tell them this, if Bai Shinro comes to them to buy grain, they are to sell it to her at triple the price as well. If they do this, in the future, I'll give them an extra 1% profit on all the grain I buy from them, straight into their own pockets." Mother finished giving her orders, and the steward left to carry them out. When we were alone, I looked at my mother. "Harming the enemy at great cost to yourself? Mother, are you sure this is worth it? She'll still get the grain in the end, and she'll be able to make her money back. But you'll have lost a lot." Mother smiled and tapped my head. "You're still so naive. The money I'm spending on grain is a drop in the bucket. But for Bai Shinro, every single coin is a lifeline. She's sold everything. If she loses this grain, her family will have nothing left. Absolutely nothing. Recoup her losses? Impossible. This time, I'm going to bankrupt her." Mother was absolutely certain. She had a ruthlessly accurate instinct for business. She never made a move she wasn't sure of. Hearing her say this, I felt reassured. I stayed home, just waiting to see how she would destroy Bai Shinro. Half a month later, the drought hit in full force. The city gates were choked with refugees. The capital couldn't hold any more. Bai could no longer pretend to ignore it. The Minister of Revenue came to our house personally to ask my mother for a loan. Didn't Bai Shinro donate money for the Southern Palace? That can be used for disaster relief, at least for a while. Besides, there wasn't much war or famine during the late emperor's reign, and no succession crisis. The people paid their taxes every year. The treasury can't be so empty that you can't even afford a little relief. If you really have no money, then I'd start to wonder if someone's been lining their own pockets. The moment my mother said the word embezzlement, the Minister of Revenue's face turned pale. He didn't even bother with courtesies, and stormed out. Of course, my mother didn't lend him any money. Mother, if the Ministry of Revenue really doesn't have the money, aren't we going to help at all? I asked her. Of course not. Your great-grandfather was recognized as the richest merchant in Jiangnan not just because of his wealth, but because of his benevolence. The family motto is, help the world when you can, tend to yourself when you cannot. During the late emperor's reign, there were several droughts and floods, and your great-grandfather donated huge sums to help. That's what built his good name. Many who had been helped by him later helped him in return, which is why he grew even richer. Your grandmother often reminds us of this motto. She holds it as a sacred rule. And I hold it close to my heart as well. But if I donate this money, I'm not going to give it to the Ministry of Revenue, not to Qinbai. It would just end up in some official's pocket. Mother said with contempt. Then who do we give it to? I asked, puzzled. Qin Yi. Him? Soon, the ministers will present a joint memorial to the emperor, asking him to choose a man to lead the relief effort. If he has no money of his own, he'll give the task to the person he fears most. When that happens, I'll give the money directly to Qin Yi. It'll save me the trouble of running around buying grain myself. Much simpler. Mother rubbed her tired brow. I had heard that Qin Yi had been summoned to the palace by Qinbai and was kept there, under guard. I'd been racking my brains trying to figure out how he would get out. I hadn't expected this to be his chance. These days, everyone in the house was busy. My father had practically taken up residence in his study, not even coming out for meals. My mother was busy with her shops and the grain issue, constantly coming and going. My brother was still in the south, investigating the plague. Only I was free, just occasionally helping my mother with a few small shop-related tasks. My mind was full of these worries, and I couldn't sleep. So, I threw on a coat and went out to the garden for some air. But as soon as I stepped outside, I saw a figure leap over my wall. I chased after them. Just as the figure was about to escape our grounds, I picked up a stone and threw it. Stop right there! I shouted. The figure nimbly dodged the stone, but they stopped at the wall, not climbing over. Little thief! I yelled, but as the figure turned and pulled down their mask, I saw that it was Qin Yi. My curses died on my lips. His cold, hard stare was genuinely intimidating. Aren't you supposed to be in the palace? Why are you sneaking into my house in the middle of the night? I asked, surprised. I came to discuss something with your father. I thought about it. He had been coming from the direction of my father's study. There was a sudden, awkward silence. Oh, okay. Well, you can go then. I pointed at the wall. He didn't move. Is there something else? I asked, keeping my head down, unable to meet his gaze. His stare felt like knives. My eyes wandered aimlessly, finally landing on a familiar white handkerchief peeking out of his sleeve. Is that? I took a step closer and pulled the handkerchief out of his sleeve. Qin Yi reached out to stop me, but he was too late. I pointed at the embroidered cloud on the handkerchief. You've been keeping my handkerchief? I felt a flash of anger. He had no right to a young lady's personal items. I looked up at him, no longer afraid. For the first time, his eyes showed a hint of panic. But he quickly regained his composure. It's yours, you're right. But I didn't steal it. You gave it to me. Impossible. I would never give such an intimate item to a man. This is from 5 years ago, in the cave. You used it to cool my fever, and you left it behind in your hurry. 5 years ago? I held the handkerchief up to the moonlight. The fabric was indeed old, and the edges were yellowed. It clearly wasn't a new piece. Then, you still shouldn't be carrying it around with you. If someone saw it, my reputation would be ruined. I mean, the handkerchief only had a simple cloud pattern on it. It was a common design. No one would be able to trace it back to me. I was just annoyed. He'd scared me when I was a kid, and now he was scaring me again with that cold face. I apologize. His apology was so quick, so unexpected, that I was stunned. He had such a severe expression, I assumed he'd be stubborn. I didn't expect him to back down so easily. It made me feel bad for being so angry. All right, it's fine. You can go. I'll keep the handkerchief. Don't see you out. I turned to go back inside. Wait. He called out. What now? I asked, not turning around. This handkerchief has been with me for 5 years. To me, it's more precious than a protective charm. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to give it back, no matter what he said. His Majesty has appointed me to lead the relief effort. I'll leave tomorrow. Go ahead, I don't care. This trip could be dangerous. I don't know if I'll come back. Why was he talking about life and death in the middle of the night? It gave me the creeps. A cold breeze blew, and I pulled my coat tighter. If I die out there, he continued, my last thought will probably be that I should have kept that handkerchief. Ugh. Fine. Take it, just take it. I spun around, shoved the handkerchief back into his hand, and ran back into my room as fast as I could. Even after I closed the door, I felt a chill running down my spine. It was just a handkerchief. Why was he talking about life and death? This man was a real demon. 3 days later, Chini reached the hardest-hit prefectures. Before he arrived, he had his men open storehouses in nearby, relatively prosperous cities to transport grain. This barely kept the crisis at bay for a few days. Then, my mother's silver started flowing like snow to his men. They bought grain everywhere in the name of the government, and no merchant dared to inflate the price. They soon gathered a massive supply. The rest of the silver was distributed to the people for their daily needs. A month later, the situation in those prefectures was largely under control. My mother and I had also been setting up a porridge kitchen at the capital's gates for over a month. The crowds of refugees had gone from an endless sea to only a few dozen today. Most of them would rather return home, if they could. Now that Chini had stabilized the situation, most had chosen to go back. My mother gave 10 taels of silver to each person who wanted to return, enough to see them home. At first, my mother hadn't wanted me to come. But I couldn't stand watching her work so hard while I sat at home eating. After I begged her a few times, she relented. We weren't worried about assassination attempts from Chin Bai. If he was foolish enough to act against us now, especially my mother and me, he'd be branded an even bigger tyrant. Besides, we had plenty of martial artists protecting us. We soon grew complacent, focusing only on how many refugees were left, how much porridge we needed, and whether we had enough grain. It was another half-month before the refugee crisis in the capital truly subsided. And as peace returned, I finally understood the full scope of my mother's scheme against Bai Shinro. As my mother had predicted, Bai Shinro had sold all her shops for cash and used all of it to buy grain. She hoarded it, waiting for the price to peak before selling. But just when the price had reached 5 times the original, my mother made her move. She released her massive grain reserves onto the market, selling at a low price. She also used a lot of her grain to feed the refugees outside the city. In an instant, the hoarders were left with grain they couldn't sell. Those who'd bought at high prices were stuck. Those who accepted reality early on had sold at a small loss, limiting the damage. But Bai Shinro was stubborn. She refused to take a loss. She held on, hoping the price would rise again. But luck wasn't on her side. With the crisis over, grain prices plummeted to new lows. Bai Shinro had lost everything. Luo Yenjin, you set me up. One day, my mother was at one of her newly acquired shops when Bai Shinro blocked her way. Oh. And what if I did? My mother admitted it, brazenly. You. Bai Shinro's hand shook as she pointed at my mother. I'll tell you this, the pawn shop you sold your shops to was mine. All your shops are now mine. Happy? Didn't you say that heaven sees all, and that the wicked will be punished? Here's your punishment. What are you so angry about? When I first opened my shops in the capital, you nearly drove me out of business. But I survived. Your own poor judgment, your own bad decisions, they led you to ruin, not me. I didn't make you donate to the Ministry of Revenue. I didn't make you sell your shops. And I certainly didn't make you hoard grain. All I did was help the refugees. Many other merchants were also hit by my price drop. They haven't come crying to me. What makes you think you have the right? The winner writes history. You've put plenty of merchants out of business yourself in the capital. If you've done the same, don't come crying to me. It just makes you look like a hypocrite. Mother sneered. You just wait. I'll make your whole family suffer. You'll all die a miserable death. Bai Shinro screamed. A miserable death? My mother laughed as if she'd heard the best joke. She grabbed Bai Shinro's collar. And what gives you the right? Your husband, who was a fifth-rank official his whole life and could barely manage being a minister of rights. Your family's fortune that you've already squandered? Or your 2 useless sons? Bai Shinro's face turned purple with rage. Oh, I almost forgot. You also have a daughter who's the Empress. What has she done for you? Besides costing you half your fortune? Why don't you have her whisper in the Emperor's ear and see if he dares to touch us? Mother released her, wiping her hands with a handkerchief in disgust. You. Bai Shinro couldn't form a single coherent sentence. She let out a choked sob, and then she collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Qin Yi returned from the relief mission even more famous than before. He'd been loved by the army, now he had the hearts of the people. But the moment he returned to the capital, Qin Bai had him confined to the palace again. 3 days later, before the dust had even settled, a new disaster struck. A plague had broken out in the capital and the surrounding cities. It started with a guard at the palace gate. He first showed signs of a cold, fever, chills, aches, and the imperial physician diagnosed it as such. But the medicine didn't work. He started vomiting and having diarrhea. He died a few days later. The physician who had treated him, along with everyone who'd been in contact with him, began to show similar symptoms. The head of the Imperial Medical Institute quickly realized this wasn't a cold. It was an epidemic. My father, hearing the news, immediately sent a letter to my brother. But before the letter even reached him, my brother returned. My father explained the situation in the capital, and my brother confirmed it was likely the same plague he'd encountered in the southern town. It's too much of a coincidence that it broke out at the same time in the capital and the surrounding cities. I suspect someone deliberately spread it. My brother theorized. Luckily, Xiao Xiao has already found a cure for this plague. And I've learned how to manage this kind of outbreak from my time in the south. We can get it under control quickly. He wrote out a list of everything needed for treatment and prevention and gave it to my mother. Quarantine the patients in the estates outside the city. Isolate them and give them this medicine 3 times a day. The quickest recovery time is 2 weeks, the longest, a month. Mother, you can start preparing these protective items now. They offer about a 90% guarantee of not catching the disease. They can be provided for free to those caring for the patients in the quarantine. As for the nobles in the city, they'll be scared and desperate. We can sell these kits to them. My brother laid out his plan. While my mother started preparing supplies as directed, the palace was in chaos. More and more palace attendants were falling ill, sending the ministers into a panic. The cities around the capital were also writing to the emperor, begging him to send someone to stabilize the populace. Fear gripped the court. And then, once again, Qin ordered Qini to go out and handle the situation. This suited my father perfectly. As soon as he heard, he told my brother to go and help Qini. Saving lives was more important than anything else. Qini followed my brother's advice. He had my brother write down the methods of prevention and had multiple copies made to distribute to officials in the surrounding cities. A copy was also given to the Imperial Medical Institute. Then, all 3 of them, Qini, my brother, and Xiao Xiao, wore protective gear and rode through the night to the most distant city, overseeing the relief efforts and offering guidance. The palace was under the care of the Imperial Medical Institute. My mother rounded up the sick in the capital and sent them to her estates outside the city. She provided the protective gear to the physicians and caregivers who went to help. Fortunately, it was caught early, and the number of cases was still low. Within 2 days, all the patients in the capital had been moved. Even though the head of the Imperial Medical Institute said they'd be cured within a month, people were still terrified. They hadn't seen the results yet. A wave of panic buying swept through my mother's shops. Everyone wanted her protective kits. My mother tried to calm people down. She had already provided free kits to the neighbors of all the quarantined families. As long as they used them properly, they wouldn't be infected. But people were still afraid. They insisted on buying the kits, just in case. My mother couldn't talk them out of it, so she stopped trying. If they had money to burn, she wasn't going to stop them. Each kit cost 5 taels of silver to produce. And my mother sold them at cost. Because she hadn't raised prices during the crisis, the merchants who had lost money on their grain hoards because of her began to soften towards her. They stopped bad-mouthing her behind her back. For the officials in the capital, my mother gave the kits away for free to those she was on good terms with. She gave them to the commandant's family, the heads of the 5 great houses, for everyone in their household, based on the number of people. For those who hadn't spoken ill of our family at the 100 Flowers banquet, she sold them at cost, 5 taels of silver. For the rest, the ones who had kicked us when we were down, the price was 1,000 taels of silver a kit. Take it or leave it. My mother also kept a log of everyone who bought the kits. Each person could only buy one. If you bought one for someone else, you wouldn't get one for yourself. It was a choice between money and your life. Over the next few days, the families of the officials who had insulted us all came to buy the kits, one after another. It was deeply satisfying to watch them grit their teeth and hand over 100 times the usual price with a forced smile. About a day later, Shinra showed up with 4,000 taels in silver notes. My mother refused to take them. You're different. For your family, it's 10,000 taels per person. Why? Your daughter is the empress. Your family is naturally more distinguished. Take it or leave it. Don't block my customers. Bai Shinro left, cursing under her breath. She returned the next day with 40,000 taels in silver notes. Her entire body seemed to sag. Her eyes were red as she handed over the money. She looked like she wanted to tear my mother apart. How does it feel, Bai Shinro, to have nothing left? My mother laughed. To buy the kits, she had finally sold her grain. But the price was low. She'd only made a little over 20,000 taels. They said she'd had to borrow the rest from Chuing, who couldn't lend it all. She'd sold everything of value in her house, including a family heirloom jade, just to scrape together the money. Bai Shinro stared at my mother's smiling face, and fainted again. A week later, an investigation by the Dali Temple and the Ministry of Justice uncovered the source of the plague. It was an old subordinate of the late Prince Gong, seeking revenge for his master. He had deliberately brought the infected clothing and belongings of the southern plague victims to the capital and the surrounding cities. A month later, the plague in the capital was completely contained. Another month after that, the plague in the surrounding cities was also under control. My brother, Xiao Xiao, and Qin prepared to return to the capital. In the middle of the night, my mother shook me awake. She covered my mouth, told me not to make a sound, and led me to the back gate. I was surprised to see that all the servants, maids, and even the steward were waiting there. My brother had returned, and he and Xiao Xiao were mounted on horses. Qin Yi was there too. He was standing by a carriage at the gate with my father. Wife, take Qing'er to the estate. Stay there. It will be over soon. Don't worry. My father took my mother's hand. Qin Yi walked over to me. His normally fierce eyes held a new, softer emotion. Don't be afraid. He spoke, his voice gentler than usual. I stared at him, still drowsy. He raised his hand, as if to touch my head. I instinctively flinched away. His hand hovered in the air for a moment, then slowly came down to his chest. He reached inside his robes and pulled out a small, exquisite dagger. For protection. He handed it to me. I hesitated, but then took it. The carriage began to move. The figures of my father, my brother, and Qin Yi grew smaller and smaller until they vanished. I turned my head and saw Xiao Xiao, unconscious, lying inside the carriage. My brother had knocked her out before they left. I sighed, thinking that my brother had likely just added another obstacle to his already difficult pursuit of her. About an hour later, we arrived at the estate. Judging by the distance, we had left the city. The servants quickly prepared a room. My mother told me not to worry and sent me to bed. But once I was inside, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the image of my father and brother growing smaller and smaller in the distance. My heart was filled with anxiety. I clutched the dagger Qin Yi had given me, holding it to my chest. It made me feel a little safer. I ran my fingers over the dagger. It felt like something was engraved on it. I held it up to the candlelight. There was a cloud, carved into the metal. It looked like the one on my handkerchief. I traced the engraving with my finger, staring at it. And before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. When I woke up, it was already light outside. I got up and walked out the door. My mother was sitting in the middle of the yard, her gaze fixed on the gate. Who knows how long she'd been sitting there. Xiao Xiao was there too, standing beside her, also staring at the gate. I went over and joined them. I hadn't even been standing there for a moment when there was a knock on the door. My mother stopped me and Xiao Xiao from answering and went to open it herself. The door opened, and it was one of Qin Yi's men. The tension on my mother's face instantly melted away. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, like I'd been granted a reprieve. His men escorted us into the palace. My mother was taken to find my father. Xiao Xiao was guided to my brother. I was led by one of Qin Yi's men to the Xianjing Hall, the Hall of Political Affairs. On the way, I learned roughly what had happened. The plague in the cities around the capital should have ended last month, at the same time as in the capital. But Qin Bai, seeing how much the people loved Qin Yi, had deliberately spread the plague again, causing a new outbreak, so he could have Qin Yi punished. His callous disregard for the people, his selfishness, enraged my brother and Qin Yi. They decided it was time, and together they launched a rebellion. My father had been forced into it. But he must have made preparations, because they took the palace so quickly. Qin Yi's man brought me to the Xianjing Hall. I froze at what I saw inside. Qin Yi stood in the center of the hall, tall and straight. At his feet lay a woman, prostrate on the ground. It was Chu Ying. Prince Jinbei, she sobbed, her voice trembling. I have admired you for so long. Please don't kill me. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Chu Ying, tears streaming down her face, reached out to grab Qin Yi's robes. He sidestepped her. Whatever I want. Qin Yi said, his voice as cold as ice. Yes, yes, yes. Chu Ying clutched at him, her only hope. Fine. Then go and kill Qin Bai. And I'll let you live. K. Kill His Majesty? One life for another. You want to live, don't you? So, you have to kill someone for me. Qin Yi said, his tone cold and cruel. Chu Ying stared at his cold, ruthless eyes. After a long moment, she made her decision, her voice barely a whisper. Yes. But, my prince, she said, looking up, if I do this for you, after you're on the throne, will you give me a place in your harem? Qin Yi looked down at her, and then he laughed. The people around Qin Bai are truly all the same. He clapped his hands. A side door opened, and Qin Bai was dragged in, held by two men in Imperial Guard uniforms. His mouth was gagged. His eyes were fixed on Chu Ying, bloodshot, as if he wanted to devour her. Chu Ying trembled in fear. Qin Yi waved his hand, and the guards released Qin Bai. He charged at Chu Ying. She screamed and tried to hide behind Qin Yi, but he had already retreated to the throne at the top of the hall. Why, Your Majesty? Chu Ying's voice was a trembling sob. But before she could finish, Qin Bai grabbed her by the head and slammed it into the ground. Bitch! I gave you everything, and you betray me? Bitch! Within moments, Chu Ying had stopped breathing. Having vented his rage, Qin Bai collapsed to the floor. He looked as though he knew his end was near, his face pale with despair. Suddenly, his gaze swept over me, standing in the doorway, and his eyes lit up. Qing-er! Qing-er! You're here to save me, aren't you? I knew it! You've always been good to me. It's all my fault. If I'd never listened to that Chu Ying's lies. If I hadn't married her, if I'd married you, with your father and grandfather's support, I would never have ended up like this. Qin Bai was beside himself, lunging towards me. Stop him! Qin Yi roared. Two guards forced Qin Bai to the ground, his face smashing against the stone floor. Who told you to bring her here now? Qin Yi strode over to me and demanded, his voice harsh. The man who had brought me fell to his knees. Forgive me, Prince. I thought you'd want to see the young lady immediately. I was too hasty. I misjudged the timing. Go and receive 10 lashes tomorrow. Yes, Prince. The man stood up and stepped aside. I was left standing there, alone with Qin Yi. Stay behind me. Don't wander off, he said, his gaze serious. I nodded, almost unconsciously. Chin-yi led me into the hall. Chin-bai's face was half pressed against the floor. As he watched us approach together, his eyes bulged with rage. You, Yun Qing. You shameless woman, he roared. The next moment, Chin-yi drove his foot into Chin-bai's chest, sending him flying against a pillar with a sickening crunch. He coughed up blood. If you can't speak like a civilized person, I'll have your tongue removed. Chin-yi's voice was cold and menacing. Chin-bai curled up on the ground, clutching his chest. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Chin-yi gave him a look of pure contempt and asked his men, "Where's Chen-hsien?" "The Empress Dowager is being held in the back." "Shall I bring her?" "Bring her." Moments later, Chen-hsien was brought in, her face ashen with fear. When she saw Chin-bai crumpled in a corner of the hall, she let out a shriek and rushed to his side. "My son! My poor son! Don't scare your mother." Seeing him open his eyes, she finally let out a sigh of relief. "Chin-yi, my buyer is the son of heaven. If you harm him, the people will curse you." Chen-hsien turned to Chin-yi, her voice sharp. "Don't worry," Chin-yi said calmly. "It's he who will be cursed." He then threw 2 daggers on the floor before them. "I am a generous man. You killed my father. One life for one is fair. I won't kill both of you. Decide, right now, who will walk out of this hall." "You dare to make us turn on each other? You're dreaming." Chen-hsien pointed at him, enraged. "I'm only giving you one chance. I'll count to 3. If you haven't decided by then, you can both go to hell together." 3. Chin-yi started slowly. "Kill us if you want. Why waste your breath? My son would never kill me." "We'll never." Chen-hsien didn't get to finish. A dagger was driven into her back. She turned, her eyes wide with disbelief, to see Chin-bai holding the hilt. Chin-yi suddenly moved in front of me, blocking my view. A warm hand covered my eyes. "Don't look. I'd seen far worse. That bloody figure all those years ago was much more terrifying than Chen-hsien." I pushed his hand away. Chin-yi looked at me, a flash of regret in his eyes. "I really shouldn't have let you stay. You were the one who wanted me to stay. You were the one who wanted me to leave. Men. Why are you so complicated? Mother, forgive me. You've lived a long life. I still have many years ahead of me. Consider this another way of helping me." I heard Chin-bai's voice. He wasn't looking at Chen-hsien, his voice trembling. A single tear rolled down Chen-hsien's cheek. Then, her face contorted with rage. She reached out to claw at Chin-bai, but he stabbed her again and again. She slumped to the ground, her eyes still open in death. "I underestimated your cruelty. I thought you were just ruthless to your brothers and uncles, but family means nothing to you either, does it? You could even kill your own mother." Chin-yi said. "You forced me to do it." Chin-bai screamed. He looked at Chin-yi warily. "You gave your word. You have to let me go. Everyone in this hall saw it. If you go back on your word, how will you ever command respect? I don't need you to teach me my business." Chin-yi looked down at him with disgust. "Don't worry. I'm not going to kill you. In fact, I'm going to make sure you live a long, long life. Spread the word, Qin Yi commanded. His Majesty, being deeply repentant, has voluntarily abdicated in my favor. He will soon write a confession to the people, begging for their forgiveness. The Empress Dowager Qin has passed away from illness. His Majesty is so devastated he wishes to follow her in death. Out of respect for her, he has decided to go to the Imperial Mausoleum to guard her tomb for the rest of his days. You monster! You're worse than a demon! Qin Bai screamed. He lunged at Qin Yi with the dagger. The guards restrained him. Break one of his legs. Send him to the mausoleum. Make sure he doesn't die. He's not to do any work. Just have him kneel before his mother's spirit tablet every day and repent. Yes, Prince. Qin Bai was dragged away, screaming curses, until he was gagged. 3 days later, Qin Yi ascended the throne. Qin Bai's crime, spreading the plague for his own selfish gain, was made public. The ministers were disgusted. Whether out of fear of Qin Yi, or genuine contempt for Qin Bai, not a single civil official spoke up in his defense. They unanimously accepted Qin Yi as the new emperor. Half the military officials were loyal to my father, the other half to Qin Yi. And my father supported Qin Yi. So, no one spoke out. Half a month after Qin Yi took the throne, he did something huge. He launched a crackdown on corruption. He arrested the Minister of Revenue, the Bai family, and their cronies. The amount of silver seized was staggering, even my mother was taken aback. The minister and the other main perpetrators were sentenced to death by beheading. Their families were banished to the frontiers, with a 3-generation ban on holding office. Bai Shinro's family was also sentenced to banishment. Bai Shinro hadn't been a corrupt official herself, but after my mother had ruined her, her family was destitute. Chuing, to save face for herself and her position, refused to give her a single tael of the more than 10,000 she had. In desperation, Bai Shinro had been persuaded by the minister's wife to get involved in the corruption. And so, everything came to an end. My mother was so happy these days that she gave out bonuses to everyone in the house 3 times a day. Even the clerks in her shops got a share. My brother and Xiao Xiao, for reasons unknown, had grown very close lately. It seemed a wedding was in the air. My mother, with no rivals in the capital and bored out of her mind, asked me one day if I had my eye on anyone. "Mother," I said, clutching my heart, "didn't you promise to support me for life? You're already tired of me?" "Of course not. Now that Qin Bai is no longer emperor, no one will use that broken engagement against you. I just thought, if you liked someone, you could try it out. No need to worry about marriage or anything. Since your brother is about to be settled." Well, that was too fast. I didn't see any drama at all. I'm relying on you for a bit of entertainment. So, she was bored because there was no drama with my brother, and she wanted to create some with me? I appreciated the sentiment, but I think it was a bit selfish. After that, every time my mother saw me at home, she'd kick me out, saying I'd never meet anyone if I just sat around all day. Soon, the capital's Lantern Festival arrived. My mother hustled me out the door right after dinner. With a maidservant in tow, I wandered through the streets eating and browsing. I saw people releasing sky lanterns by the lake. I was curious, I'd never released one before, and went over for a closer look. To my surprise, I saw a familiar figure there. It was Qin Yi. He was looking up at the lanterns in the sky, his expression unreadable, but a palpable air of sadness surrounded him. I found myself walking towards him. What a coincidence. He turned and smiled. "HM." I mumbled in reply. It had been almost a month since I'd seen him, that day in the hall. It felt like ages. He was wearing a moon-white silk robe instead of his usual black. His sudden smile was like watching the ice melt in spring. It was mesmerizing. Caught in his gaze, I didn't know what to do with my hands. I see you still carry the dagger I gave you. Following his eyes, I looked down at the dagger at my waist. I'd gotten used to carrying it because it was much better than my old ones. Yours is a good one, I said, sincerely. He looked at me, a brighter smile spreading across his face. I was so captivated by his smile that I lost myself for a moment. When I came to, I wanted to slap myself for being so easily swayed by a handsome face. Well, you came to release a sky lantern, right? I actually have something. I was flustered and tried to make an excuse to leave. But he cut me off. I'm here for my father. My mother died early. I'm the only son, raised by my father. Now that he's gone, I have no family left. I don't know if it was mentioning the sky lantern that brought up painful memories for him, but his expression turned mournful. The sadness on his face made me feel guilty. Before I could say anything, he took a step closer. I caught a faint scent of alcohol. He'd been drinking? Chini turned his head and looked at a street vendor selling candied hawthorns. My father used to buy me these all the time. By the time I grew up, I didn't like them anymore. I'd just take one bite and put it down. Now, even if I want one, no one will ever buy me one again. He smiled, but the smile was full of sorrow. The more he spoke, the worse I felt. I'd clearly stirred up these painful memories for him. I rushed over to the vendor. Stay right there. I yelled back at him. Don't go anywhere. I'll buy you one. I ran back, slightly out of breath, and held the sugared hawthorn out to him. Actually, he said, looking at me with an intense gaze, I wasn't finished. The last thing my father said to me was that whoever else, besides him, bought me a candied hawthorn, I was to marry her and make her my wife. His words came so fast and so unexpectedly that I nearly dropped the hawthorn. He caught it as it fell from my hand and took a bite. Would you like to be my empress? He stared at me, his gaze full of fire and expectation. I was so shocked I turned and ran. By the time I got home, my mind was still reeling. How had we gone from candied hawthorns to a marriage proposal? The next morning, my mother hauled me out of bed. Chini had come to our house to ask for my hand in marriage. I was speechless. About an hour later, Chini left. My mother called me into her room. She and my father interrogated me. So, this is why you wouldn't go out and find someone for yourself. You already had someone in mind. I've been waiting for you and your brother to give me something to be interested in, and you both settle your love lives in secret. Do you have any idea how much I've been looking forward to this? My mother was interrogating me, but she was clearly complaining. I tried to explain that things between me and Chini weren't what she thought. She didn't believe a word. She said that when she asked my brother about his relationship with Xiao Xiao, he said the same thing. Now he was practically tethered to her. Whatever you two have been up to, my mother said, slamming the table, I don't approve of this marriage. Why not? I hadn't even opened my mouth before my father blurted out. He's 5 years older than Chinger. He's too old. My father fell silent. After a moment, he spoke, a note of hurt in his voice. I'm 9 years older than you. Have you always thought I was too old? My mother. We're talking about Chinger. Don't change the subject. My mother snapped at my father. For once, my father stood his ground. You said this is Chinger's business. Ask her how she feels. You can't decide her life for her. My mother's instinct was to argue, but after a moment's thought, she looked at me. What do you think of this marriage? What was I supposed to say? That Chini wanted to marry me because of a sugared hawthorn and his father's last words? I had my pride. Madam, a maidservant at the door said, one of the emperor's guards is here with a letter for the young lady. Should we accept it? Yes, bring it in. The maidservant left. My mother turned to me. A love letter? And you say there's nothing between you? It can't be a love letter, I said confidently. It's probably that he's thought about it, regretted it, and is writing to tell me not to take his proposal seriously. My mother gave me a long, skeptical look. I looked back at her, the picture of innocence. I don't believe you, she said slowly. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It hurt. Fine, we'll see. A moment later, the maidservant returned with the letter. I tore it open in front of my parents. See, it's probably not. Huh? What's this? I stared at the line of bold calligraphy on the page. My vision went dark. The first time I saw you, my heart was aflutter. In the days we've known each other, it's only grown fonder. My mother read the words aloud. She gave me a knowing look. Caught red-handed. You still want to lie to me? The engagement went ahead anyway. When I tried to say no, I found I couldn't. My mind was full of images, Chinese hand holding my handkerchief that night, the look in his eyes when he saw me off that morning, the way he covered my eyes in the hall. Even the dagger at my side was a constant reminder. And then there was that image of him by the lake, alone and lost in grief. The next day, Chini issued an edict naming me as his empress. And he declared that I would be his one and only empress. There would be no other consorts in the palace. Many ministers were displeased. They had their own daughters they wanted to send to the palace. But Chini forced all the ministers who objected to stand outside the imperial study for the rest of the day, without food or water. And he did it again, every time someone brought it up. Eventually, they all fell silent. Our wedding was set for 3 months hence. I was the one who chose the date. I still had some reservations, and I wanted time to prepare myself mentally. The night before the wedding, Xiao Xiao came to see me. I already considered her my sister-in-law, so I poured out my heart to her. When I told her about the Lantern Festival, she first looked at me strangely, then with sudden understanding. What is it? I asked, confused. Men, she said, gritting her teeth, act drunk to make you cry. I thought about it for a moment. Then I understood. He'd tricked me. I was considering whether it was too late to call off the wedding when Xiao Xiao suddenly stood up. Where are you going? I have something to discuss with your brother. I'll be back. I saw the fury on her face, and I had a sudden flash of insight. Did my brother try that on you too? Xiao Xiao just gave a cold laugh. She pulled a silver needle from her waist and left, her face cold. As soon as she was gone, my mother came in. Are you done with your talk? Come here, your mother will teach you some real skills. She sat beside me and threw a few small booklets onto the bed. I thought they were storybooks. I opened one and was so shocked I threw it down. They were pornography. Mother, why are you showing me this? I felt my face burn. Don't be shy, every mother teaches her daughter this before the wedding. I was taught the same way by your grandmother. She pushed the books back into my hands and began to explain them in detail. I wanted to bury my face in the blanket. Wedding night. Yi lifted my veil. He was magnificent in his red wedding robes, more breathtaking than I'd ever seen him. But as he drew closer, I caught the faint scent of wine on his breath. It reminded me of the Lantern Festival, and my anger returned. "Stop right there." I held the scale he'd used to lift my veil, pointing it at him like a weapon. "Why is my wife so angry?" Perhaps a little tipsy, Yi tilted his head, a soft expression in his eyes that held only tenderness. I shook my head, telling myself not to be charmed. "Admit it!" "That night at the Lantern Festival, were you playing me? You used my sympathy, my pity, so I couldn't say no." Yi's eyes flickered. He smiled. "My wife is clever." Clever? I was a fool. Now I was truly angry. "Get out! I'm sleeping alone tonight." I turned away, refusing to look at him. But he didn't leave. He took the scale from my hand and leaned down, pressing his body against mine. "What are you doing?" I pushed him, furious. He caught both my hands and pinned them to the pillow on either side of my head. "If you didn't have feelings for me," he murmured, his head resting against my neck, "my little act wouldn't have worked." I had no words to refute him. But I was still angry. I tried to push him away. He bent his head, and I felt his warm breath on my neck. My mind went blank. All anger forgotten. But after half an hour, he was still fumbling, completely clueless. "Are you impotent?" My anger had cooled, my wits returning. I was feeling brave and, honestly, a little smug. His expression darkened. He bent down again. In the end, I had to guide him through it. By the early hours of the morning, I was beginning to regret it. If I could go back in time, I would have knocked myself unconscious. He might have been clueless at first, but I shouldn't have taught him what I did. The story is now complete. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and support me.